yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Arora.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. At the outset, I'm extremely thankful to Professor Vinu Prakash, Professor Verma, and Dr. Sushma for having given me this opportunity of interacting with you. After listening to the history of growth of this department, first becoming a standalone department, then getting into a deemed university, and then getting upgraded to a A-class university, I think it is a big boon for everybody. Taking clue from that, rather than looking at the bane from the COVID virus infection, why should we not take it as a boon? Had it not been for this COVID virus infection, I think we would not have interacted on this digital virtual platform. I think it is setting us standards for the new norms which we must follow. Sitting in our own cozy rooms, we're able to interact with good quality audio-visual meetings, which are only going to improve with 5G stepping into India soon within some period of time. With that, I'll start my presentation. The topic of my presentation, which I think very well suits to this biochemistry and biomedical sciences, is the journey of fat in the body. Are my slides visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
So my presentation is fat in the liver. This is a specific, being a gastroenterologist, I chose to interact with you because most of you in biochemistry and biomedical sciences will be pretty aware of the journey of fat in the body. And you'll be surprised to know there are 3 billion people in the world who are going around, and 40% of the world population is going around with the fat in the liver. So fat in the liver, is it a friend or foe? I'm going to just decipher it over the next 20 to 25 minutes, which have been allotted to me. So as a physician or as a layman, what do we think the fats are? In fact, fats are basically different. It can be used in colloquial language as a word which will have several meanings in biology. It could be a simple molecule, it could be a tissue, or it could be an organ. All of it is referred to as fat. But fats are primarily made of straight hydrocarbon chains. These are organic chains, which are typically even in number because of the way they are produced in the body. They are straight carbon chain with associated hydrogen molecule. So a combination, that is the reason it's called a fatty acid. It has a carbon chain with attached fatty acids. And when we say that we are talking of a fat molecule, what do we mean? The simple meaning is that you have this carbohydrate backbone called glycerol, to which 3 different fatty acids get attached. So this combination of glycerol coupled with 3 fatty acids is called triacyl glycerol. Acyl in our medical language practically means fat. So a combination of 3 fatty acids riding onto a glycerol backbone is called triacyl glycerol or TAG. And this is what is known in general language, layman's language, as the fat which we consume on day-to-day basis. Why is it that we are discussing about this fat today? As part of the triglycerides, it is an important structure of the food. It is an important component of the food in the form of either saturated fatty acid, unsaturated fatty acid, or trans fats. All the cells which are made in the body do have this membrane which is made up of phospholipids. Without this cell membranes, the mammalian cells will cease to exist. Similarly, it is an important component for formation of the sterols or the cholesterol and the hormones. And without hormones, your body will not be able to sustain on its own. So what is a saturated fatty acid? Most of you would be hearing on day-to-day basis from different physicians, cardiologists, endocrinologists, oh, this is saturated fat, please avoid it. This is unsaturated fat, this may be better. So what is the difference between them? I know from your point of view as a biochemist may not be an issue for you, but I'm sure for lay public it has a lot of meaning. A saturated fatty acid is one fatty acid in which the carbon bonds are all saturated. That means you have no potential to insert a hydrogen molecule. That is a saturated fatty acid. But look at this. This is a monounsaturated fatty acid. Over here, we have one area in which there is a double carbon to carbon bond. So there is a potential of inserting or accommodating one more hydrogen atom. atom here. So this is a monounsaturated fatty acid. Similarly, you can have another fatty acid in which more than one bonds between the carbon and carbon are double bonds. That means they have a potential to accommodate incoming hydrogen ions. So this is a polyunsaturated fatty acid. So we know saturated fatty acid does not have a potential to accommodate more hydrogen, whereas mono and polyunsaturated will have one or more areas to have incoming hydrogen ions. So this is what is fat, which is referred in general language as triacyl glycerol. This is the Amul butter which we eat on day-to-day basis. Again, reiterating the basic difference between a saturated and unsaturated fatty acid is that in saturated fatty acid, there is no double carbon to carbon bond. And whereas in monounsaturated, you have one double carbon to carbon bond. And in polyunsaturated fatty acid, which is also referred to as PUFA, we have multiple areas of carbon to carbon bonds in which you can accommodate an incoming hydrogen molecule. So how does it translate into clinical practice? So the basic difference between a saturated, unsaturated, and trans fat is that because they are densely packed, saturated fatty acids are straight, they have a high boiling point, and they are solid at room temperature, as compared to unsaturated fatty acids, which have bent chains, they are length densely packed, and they have unsaturated molecules. Where do we get these fats which we consume on day-to-day basis? Saturated fats typically come from the animals. Unsaturated fatty acids, they happen to come from the vegetable oils. And trans fats are what we consume in this so-called westernization era, which is leading to the massive outrage of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which I'll be coming to you soon. So what is the journey of fat in the body? Once you eat your fat, the components of the fat, that is fatty acid, and the other components like cholesterol, they cannot be absorbed into the blood, unlike amino acids and glucose, which are directly taken into the blood. Because of the sheer size of these molecules, they are packed into a substance called chylomicron, which are then taken up into the lymphatic system. This lymphatic system, when it is taking and transporting the fat, it has a covering of this lipoprotein, so that the hydrophobic fatty acids, they remain within the core, whereas the lipoprotein molecule having phospholipid has one single covering on the outside of it. This is in distinct contrast to a cell membrane, which has a dual layer of phospholipid. That means it is a layer of phospholipid inside and layer of phospholipid outside. That is the reason the inside of the cell is hydrophilic, whereas in lipoproteins, the inside of the cell is hydrophobic. So when the lipoproteins and the chylomicrons are transporting the absorbed fat, that is triglycerides, they also carry with them the cholesterol and the phospholipids to the various tissues. So this is what happens. You take your meal, it is absorbed into the intestines, chylomicrons are formed, they first go into the fatty tissues and the muscles. So fatty tissues as well as the muscles, that extract some fat from the chylomicron. The rest of goes out into the liver. Liver on its own also forms some part of the fat, which gets back into the excretory system as gallbladder bile. So daily you must be seeing this lipid profile reports of different components of the fat. You will have in the report chylomicrons, VLDL, LDL, and HDL. This is the daily lipid profile report which a doctor sees for you, and you go back and check with your physician whether you are all right or not. What is the basic difference between all these three? We know the larger the size of the fat containing molecule, the lesser will be the density, lesser will be the content of the cholesterol. Whereas in high density cholesterol, you will have the highest density of the cholesterol with minimum amount of the fat. So that is the basic difference between the two. So again, to pictorially show you, the larger the molecule, this is called chylomicron, which has most of it is the triglycerides, minimum amount is present in the form of proteins, lipoprotein, whereas HDL has the maximum amount of the minimum amount of the fat and maximum amount of the lipoprotein. Why is it that we call HDL as a good protein? Because this is a good lipid, because it takes the cholesterol away from the body into the liver, whereas LDL is supposed to be bad cholesterol, because it takes the cholesterol from the liver to be deposited into the tissue. So what is the fate of this absorbed fat which we consume? First of all, it can be used as a source of energy. If you take too much of the fat, it can be stored in the adipose tissue. And finally, it is used for maintaining the structural component of the body. Let's see how it is used as a source of energy. So of every gram of the fat molecule which you consume, as in biochemistry, you will be aware that this is the basic composition of the fat molecule, tag molecule. So one molecule of the fat will produce 52 molecules of the water and 55 molecules of the carbon dioxide. So every gram of fat which is metabolized produces a large amount of carbon dioxide. So theoretically, every time you're eating fat, please understand you are producing a lot of carbon dioxide. And this fat is an important vital source of energy and storage in the body. Look at this. If you have, if you are just dependent on during fasting stage, if you are just dependent on glucose and the glycogen, you have a total store of 500 gram. Each gram of glycogen gives you 4 kilocalories per gram. So if total storage of glycogen, which is a storage form of the glucose, is only 500 gram, and if you are fasting throughout the day and you need 2000 calories to survive, so if you are dependent on glucose alone, you are going to survive only for one day. Muscle makes up around 6 kg in an adult of 70 kg. 1 gram of amino acids or the protein gives you 4 kilocalories per kg. So 6,000 will give you 24,000 calories total. So if you are needing 2,000 calories per day, you are going to survive for 12 days if you eat nothing and you are dependent on your protein mass. But something which saves us, people who go on fast, look at people like Anna Hazare who are on fast for as long as 60 days. Average adult has 12 kg of fat. Each gram of fat gives you 9 calories. So you have 110,000 calories. So if you have fat, you can survive without eating anything for a period of about 60 days. So that is the biggest function of the fat in the body. In addition, if you take too much of the fat, it gets stored in the body. And once it is stored, it starts getting stored in the subcutaneous tissue, in the visceral tissue, as well as in the bone marrow. Not only that, fat is also useful for making a large number of your structural body components. It maintains your health, healthy skin and hair. It maintains the right body temperature. It is important for the functioning of the cells. It gives you cushioning of the body organs. It gives you important components of your various type of neuropeptides within the brain and the retina. It is important for absorption of the fat soluble vitamins. It is a shock absorber for heart, peritoneal cavity, soft organs, as well as the bone, and it also boosts your immunity. So why is it that suddenly fat, which has been so good to you, it gives you energy storage for a period of 2 months, it maintains your integrity, it gives you so much of advantages. How does it become foe? Why is it that it becomes your enemy? This is the reason. If you look at the way our tummies are increasing, our intake is increasing, your exercise is decreasing. And this is the recent article from Times of India, which clearly state over the last 30 years, human beings have been consuming 125% more diet than what they were consuming. So our lifestyles have changed. We have stopped doing exercises. We have remotes in our hand. We are hooked on to WhatsApp, TikTok, Weibo, and Facebook. We have remote with channels which can easily change the channel. You don't have to go and change the buttons of the television. You don't have to go to the park to listen to the music. You have earphones. All that leads to decreased activity and more consumption of the food. And once these subcutaneous tissues are started becoming full, the liver starts getting affected with the fat. That is where the problem begins. So how does a person become fat? The problem lies in the behavioral problem. That means there is something wrong. You keep eating a lot, you become obese. Obesity leads to insulin resistance. Insulin resistance causes fatty liver. And once you have a fatty liver, there is a cascade of events which keeps on getting perpetuated. How does it begin? First problem is the behavioral deviance. Let me give you an example. Look at these two major examples, animal experiments in rats. This is a normal rat. Once you give him food, it leads to increased glucose in the blood that stimulates the release of insulin, which goes to the adipose tissue. Adipose tissue releases a hormone called leptin. Leptin goes into the brain and tells the brain there is enough glucose, please stop eating. That is called satiety. That is the feeling of fullness. Look at this fatty mice or mouse. Once it starts eating, you have a lot of glucose in the blood. Glucose stimulates adipose tissue that produces leptin, but leptin somehow is not able to tell hypothalamus that enough is enough and you should stop eating. So there is some problem of a leptin resistance. So this fat rat does not realize that there is enough of glucose in the body. So this is the basic difference between this young normal person, boy, and a chubby person who continues to eat chocolates, because the hypothalamus is not realizing that there is enough of glucose in the body. So this is what happens in the normal course of the event. This is the fat, and you keep on pushing in more fat after eating, but then there is a good anti-resistance mechanism in the body, anti-inflammatory mechanism in the fat cells, which will prevent the release of the noxious substances from the fatty tissue, which will cause insulin resistance. But look at this guy who has become fat. The fatty liver has become pretty bloated up. So there is ischemia in the macrophages of the fatty liver, which produce pro-inflammatory cytokines like TNF-alpha and IL-6, which lead to stimulation of the macrophages. There is a shift of macrophages from M2 to M1, that means you have pro-inflammatory macrophages, which lead to a cascade of inflammation. So you have obesity, which causes insulin resistance. Once you have insulin resistance, you will develop fatty liver. How does it develop? Is as you are already in biochemistry, you will be knowing more than what I can make you understand. But suffice here to say that insulin acts by acting on its receptor called insulin receptor by causing tyrosine phosphorylation of the downstream signal. What happens in insulin resistance is that this tyrosine phosphorylation is converted into serine phosphorylation, so that there is onward signaling of the movement of this GLUT4 molecule, the molecule which will take the glucose in, that gets inhibited. So there is, because of the serine phosphorylation, this step does not proceed. Moreover, the incoming cytokines from the inflamed fatty tissue, which are called TNF-alpha and interleukin B, they also call serine phosphorylation. That leads to failure of the translocation of the GLUT4 receptor onto the surface, and hence glucose cannot be taken into the body, and that is what leads to diabetes and insulin resistance. And once you have a glucose insulin resistance, so this is the normal course of the insulin. In the normal course of the event, insulin will lead to increased glucose uptake in the tissue, decreased lipolysis. That means there is no fatty acid release for the liver. But once you develop insulin resistance, you see the adipose tissue cannot take up glucose. There is an ongoing release of the fatty acid from the adipose tissue, which comes into the liver, leading to development of fatty liver. So you have a chain of events. There is a continuing chain of the events. You develop fat. First of all, you develop obesity. Obesity causes insulin resistance causing more fatty liver. Fatty liver per se causes insulin resistance, and there is an ongoing activity in a vicious cycle. So a non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which just had deposition of the fat, in the later stages keeps on producing inflammatory substances, which will lead to development of fatty liver disease. And once you have fatty liver disease, there is a cascade of the event which develops. Fatty liver will cause insulin resistance, hyperglycemia, and more inflammatory cytokines are released, which will cause diabetes mellitus. Diabetes mellitus causes fatty liver. Fatty liver will perpetuate diabetes. So there is a ongoing vicious cycle. Once you have a fatty liver, because of the altered dyslipidemic and atherogenic dyslipidemia, you will develop coronary vascular disease. You will develop kidney disease because of the release of the pro-inflammatory cytokines, which will badly affect your kidneys. And then at the same time, a patient with fatty liver, because of the inflammation, will develop hepatocellular carcinoma and insulin resistance. And once you have insulin resistance, there is a preferential signaling through the different mechanisms leading to mitogenesis. And all these patients are more prone to develop GI and non-GI cancers, simply because of diabetes and insulin resistance. So insulin resistance is also associated with a lot of other non-hepatic manifestations like hypothyroidism, polycystic ovarian syndrome, osteoporosis, and hypogonadism. You'll be surprised to know that 20% of the young girls in India have polycystic ovarian syndrome, which again is a manifestation of the insulin resistance, which can be triggered by development of the fatty liver. So ladies and gentlemen, we have excess of the fat, which till now had been so good for us. I showed you so many advantages of having good fat. But then if you have high fat, it causes non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, obesity, diabetes, hypertension, coronary artery disease, kidney disease, malignancies, endocrinopathy. So it is a double-edged sword. So you have fat which has two sides of the coin. On one hand, it gives you structural stability, it's giving you cushioning effect. It helps you absorb food. It gives you stability of the functioning of the cells and maintaining the membranes. And at the same time, you have a cascade of events with fatty liver disease. So maintaining a balance of the fat is as difficult as one can think of. So to conclude, ladies and gentlemen, fat is an energy-rich nutrient which is digested and absorbed by a tightly regulated metabolism. Though invaluable in maintaining health, dietary excess may lead to plethora of problems with the potential to affect almost every organ in the body. The initiation of the fatty liver and insulin resistance are crucial initial steps in the disease cascade and need to be addressed timely, aggressively, competitively, and comprehensively. So to end up, ladies and gentlemen, I think the story of fat is just like the story of a Me Too movement which started recently in US and then spilled over to India. As much as you would like to meet this girlfriend, you have to understand the complication arising out of it. With that, I'll stop sharing my slides and hand it over back to the chairpersons.
Thank you, Dr. Arora, for wonderful talk and giving us inputs regarding the adverse effect of fat. No doubt, fat has got not many beneficial effects, but simultaneously, as you have rightly pointed, there are so many adverse effects also. A small question: not many patients we are seeing who are having elevated liver enzymes. What is the cause for that?
In fact, the commonest cause of isolated enzymes in liver is the deposition of the fat in the liver. It's called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. In fact, 3 billion people in the world suffer from obesity and fatty liver disease. Fatty liver disease is just the front runner for development of all the complications which are going to have soon. As I showed you the cascades of events. Once you have fat in the liver, you will have diabetes, hypertension, dyslipidemia, chronic heart disease. In fact, even before the liver gets damaged, if you have fat in the liver, you are more likely to die of complication of the heart disease, kidney disease, and cardiovascular problems.
That's true, and no doubt that fat plays a havoc, and with sedentary lifestyles, the cardiovascular disease and especially the diabetes and the association between diabetes and these fatty liver and all these things is quite common, and not many cases of non-alcoholic liver cirrhosis we are seeing these days because of this. One thing more, I would like to apologize to you because I mispronounced your name. It is not Alok Arora, it is Anil Arora, and the paper which was given to me was showing Alok Arora. So that is why I pronounced. I'm sorry. My apologies to you. If there is any other question, I'll see quickly that if somebody has raised any question, then I'll put. I don't think there is any question in my inbox. So I'd like to thank Dr. Anil for your wonderful presentation. I know that the wonderful work you are doing at Gangaram, and I have been hearing a lot because Dr. Lalit Srivastava and Dr. Mrs. Bhargav is there, who are known to me, and they are in biochemistry there. So Seema Bhargav and Dr. Lalit Srivastava, they used to tell me a lot about you and your wonderful work. So my compliments to you, and keep doing good work, especially in these trying times. Thank you so much. Are there any questions?
I have been lucky to have been a student of Dr. Srivastava, Dr. Manorma Bhargav. I think
wonderful.
They were
wonderful.
And I
wonderful.
remember their teachings, which I was taught about 40 years back.
Wonderful, wonderful. Lalit Srivastava is my teacher also, and till date he is mentoring me. So wonderful to hear you, and it was really very enlightening, and lot many insights we got to know about the fatty liver and the problems
if there are
which
any
are
questions from the audience, I can answer them. If anybody wants to ask any question.
I don't think there is any question.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Next speaker, maybe